Saftipin is a map-based technological platform that has several apps used to collect data about safety, particularly women's safety in public spaces around cities in the world. One of the key aspects of, I think, bringing about change is to be able to get the key stakeholders in cities to listen to you, to understand what is the problem from the point of view of the user, of the citizen, of the disempowered citizen, of the vulnerable citizen.
I do have traveled in public transport in Delhi itself, and I have really felt very uncomfortable while traveling. I remember this incident. Once this guy had followed me to my office, and he had followed me for like a month. So I personally feel that it feels really unsafe to travel in public transport. I think things can get better if people have a better perception towards women, if people think better about women and not think them as a commodity. Public transport needs to get better, the system needs to get better, women need to feel safer.
So for example, what we've done in Delhi is we've taken our data on the lighting in the city, and our data showed in 2016 that there were about 7,000 dark spots in the city. We have shared that data with Delhi government because when you provide data, they're able to act on it. And they have actually improved almost 80% of the lighting that we pointed out. And we have done a second round of audit in some of the areas and been able to show that lighting has improved. So we look at this as a very positive step, in addition to women using the app to make personal decisions about which areas are safe, which areas are not safe, and share their feelings so that other women and other citizens can use the data equally.
So there are a lot of things that can be done to improve women's use of public transport. Improve the reporting system. Many sexual assaults or harassments are not reported because women don't know the rules, how to report, or because they don't trust in the reporting systems.
Everything begins with when you recognize that there is a problem. What kind of infrastructure changes are required towards looking at issues of safety for women in the city? When we started saying that we will register all complaints, at least we realized the magnitude of the problem. And this whole process has evolved by using all the stakeholders, especially the NGOs, to give in their input so that we can arrive at a tangible roadmap in short-term and long-term basis so that we can even change the attitude of people. At least we have started doing that here in Delhi, and I hope others can also follow.
I really feel that this shift that is taking place globally is the work of a lot of grassroots work, but key players such as the UN and the FIA Foundation and other such global players who have the ability to actually influence global agendas, who have the ability to generate evidence, because wherever you go to governments to say this is a problem, they want the evidence. So one of the biggest things we have to do is to generate that evidence, and that evidence has to be robust.
Our transport system is not gender neutral. It's heavily dominated within the transport industry by men, and that's not unusual. That's true in many walks of life. But the problem for transport is if people who are designing our mobility systems are not experiencing the problems that can come from them being poorly lit, badly connected, infrequent, the way that women are, then those issues potentially don't get addressed.
If you take the numbers, just in Quito, we are 2.5 million persons. 800,000 women have suffered some form of gender violence. It's amazing, the numbers. I think if we start to understand and reflect on those numbers, and to understand that half of the population, we are afraid of walking in the streets. We are afraid of taking public transportation because we know what's going to happen to us. Women, we don't have the right to the city in the same way that other people have. We just need to be as free and as safe as everybody else while we're walking on the streets and using public transportation. And this is the only way that we can actually achieve sustainability. And so this is why it's so important that the gender issue be a core part of the sustainability agenda.
Women's safety on public transport is a crucial part of sustainable mobility, and that's why we've taken such an interest in it. If women feel unsafe and insecure when they use public transport, and they are the majority users of those services, then they'll simply stop. But worse than that, they'll also most probably not let their children use it, which means we face generations of people who are instinctively not keen on using the most sustainable modes.
You can see where we are now. We're in one of Nairobi's busiest bus stations, how hectic it is, how noisy it is. And for a woman in this situation, you have to be willing to push and be really close to other people. People will be shoving you out of the way to try and get on the bus that you need. And it's hard for everyone, but it's a situation that is magnified for women. So you also have to remember that women in Nairobi and elsewhere in the developing world have different travel patterns to men. They're doing many more frequent journeys. They're taking the children to school, they're going to the market, they're taking someone to the hospital. So they're accessing these transport options more frequently. And then on top of that, they have heightened security issues. Whether you're trying to get on a bus and someone pushes really close to you, or you're using an underpass at night and there's no lighting so you feel vulnerable. Even crossing a footbridge, which has been put in place to make you feel safe. Quite often women are vulnerable on footbridges because they're closed off from everyone else. No one can see what's going on. So it's really tricky and challenging for women to use the transport systems that are available to them.
We are happy that there's been growing awareness of this issue, not just in Kenya but worldwide. And we've partnered with organizations around the world to keep advocating for these issues. On a policy level, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals already talk about sustainable cities that are safe and secure for all, accessible to all. But when you come to the ground, the policies that have been ratified by the government are not reflected on the ground. So I think, first of all, let's start with implementation. And then after implementation, we can look at what gaps are there and how can we bridge them.
When women are using the public transport system in Bogota, their personal security is so important for them that they may change their routes, they may choose not to travel. I think also it is important to make more visible the economic benefits of making a transportation system more safe for women. Women nowadays may not take a trip because of how insecure they feel. So can you imagine how many trips could be made and how much money could be put into not only the transportation system, but the economic system of Bogota? In face of the challenges of climate change, the objectives, the Sustainable Development Objectives claim that we have to increase public transportation in all countries. So women nowadays are the biggest riders of public transportation in most cities, including Bogota. But if we keep making, or if we keep letting the transportation system to be something to be unsafe for women, that will have a very negative impact on future use of transportation. Women have a very important role, which is shaping the minds and perceptions of their kids. So if we let this negative perception pass by to the other generations, we'll have fewer and fewer public transportation riders.
We did a study to look at the perception of girls' safety in public spaces. We did it in both a rural and an urban context. And we found that 60% of the girls do not feel safe accessing public spaces. Public transport came out as one of the top spaces where girls feel unsafe. Now, if girls are afraid of being harassed or facing some form of abuse, it has a huge impact on their rights.
One of the most encouraging things that we've seen over the past few years is the growth in recognition of the scale of the problem that we have to address. We now have road traffic injury and transport firmly embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals. Major institutions like the World Bank, the United Nations, have recognized that we're not doing enough to tackle the transport crisis that we face. Now, we need to act decisively, and we need to act now. What we've been presented with by the Child Health Initiative is a very clear agenda calling for an international summit on child and adolescent health that will put transport at the centre of the deliberations between governments with a view to identifying pathways to solving the problems. We cannot afford any longer to turn our backs on the children who are being sacrificed to this crisis.
I think the idea of having a global summit on adolescent health is absolutely brilliant. We have two of our own child champions from Delhi who've been working on some of these issues who are speaking. But what I heard was that adolescents are not satisfied with that. They want more, they want their own summit, they want their own space to talk about their own issues, to be part of the solution as well, to be part of the policy making. And I think unless we have a global summit that's entirely focused on and driven by adolescents, we're not going to see that happen.
We need to see countries prioritize engaging young people. We need investment. I agree that there needs to be a huge call for action and having a global summit for adolescent health.
We know what the health problems are as practitioners, as community health workers, as government officials, and we fully support a global summit for adolescents very soon because we can't ignore it anymore.
Adolescents make such a big part of the population and they need their own summit to be addressed, to have their voices heard. I want to call for a global summit on adolescent health.
A place to begin is to put together a global summit where young people themselves take charge and lead, and this might be able to push governments into action.
I, on behalf of the Wellbeing Foundation, support the call for a global summit on adolescent health. It's important because it has never been done before and we need to do it.
I strongly support the Global Summit for Adolescent Health because we need adolescents at the table to understand what their needs are. If they're not at the table, we won't be able to hear them.
I feel like young people need to be given a bit more platform because they are the ones who know what they are actually going through, what they need. I support a global summit for adolescent health.
We need more political commitment on adolescent health.
I support the Global Summit for Adolescent Health, and I think the Global Summit for Adolescent Health will be ideal for young people.
We need more funding in adolescent health.
I completely, wholeheartedly support the global summit which is being organized for the adolescent health, and we need sustained action for it.
We need more data on adolescent health.
We support the global summit. We believe that this is going to be a platform that will address the issues that affect young people.
We need more young people represented at the center.
I support the summit on adolescent health. We should develop city streets for people and not just for cars.
We need collaboration to address adolescent health issues.
I believe there should be a global summit on adolescent health care. We need much more action.
I support a global summit for the adolescent health.
We need a global summit on adolescent health.